Now that you've learned how that you can use and integrate some of Bootstrap's components, such as the navbar, buttons, forms, etc., I've had a few questions from people asking, okay, so we're given these classes that have a completely specific styling, but I'd like to change it a little bit. So how can I use the Bootstrap components, like for example this navbar, but how do I change the background color? Or how can I change the size of it? How do I edit the class that's already been given to it? It's very, very easy to do. We pretty much do the same thing that we'd do when we're trying to style anything. And I'm going to use a button as an example. So here we're just going to take one of Bootstrap's buttons. So I've just gone into documentation and then components and then buttons. So here we are. So I'm going to essentially just copy this one here, which is the dark button, and add it in normally into my HTML. So I'm going to add it in just below this navbar. So if I refresh this, you can see we have the button right here, and this is how Bootstrap wants it to be. It's dark, when you hover over it, it gets a bit darker, it's rounded at the corners. Okay, so now we can see that the Bootstrap button is working correctly, just as it's supposed to from the Bootstrap website. But let's say we want to make, for example, the color of the text in the button blue. So obviously usually what we do is something like this. Let's just say, for now, let's just call it class button, even though that's not the actual name. What we'll do is we put color blue, right? So let's keep that in our minds. But let's take a look at the HTML for this button. So if we look, it's already got a class defined, and that's going to be somewhere in the Bootstrap file, which we've linked at the top here. But we want to change it slightly. So all we actually have to do is now look at the most basic class, which is button dark here. We could change button, but if we change that, then that would change the CSS for all the different buttons. So instead of focusing on the BTN, we're going to focus on the BTN-dark. So what we want to do is in our CSS, we're going to use that class, and we can just make changes this way as well. So let's change the text color to blue. Oops. And of course, the only other thing we need to do now that we've found out what the name of the class we want to change is, and we've put that into our CSS file, we need to link that as well. And so we want to add this just below the Bootstrap line. Wherever we're linking in the Bootstrap, we add this in just below. So we link here, and then we add bootstrap.css, and lo and behold, now that has turned blue. And let's say we want it to be blue when it's hovered as well. All we have to do is go btn dark :hover, just like we've done before. And then let's go for color pink actually. Let's mix it up a little bit. So now if I refresh this, it's blue now, and then it turns pink when I hover over it. It's not a very obvious color, so let's go for something like red, so you can see a bit more obviously. That's better. Perfect. So what we've gone over in this lecture is how you can basically customize the existing Bootstrap classes. All you have to do is make sure you link your CSS file underneath the Bootstrap link in the head, and then you look at the HTML itself, look at what the class is called. Here we're looking at button dark. Then we go to our CSS file and we just change it in this way. So what I recommend that you have a try at is maybe put a few buttons in yourself, maybe try a form. That would be very interesting practice. Have a go at adding it into your HTML, finding the right class to change, linking your CSS file just below the Bootstrap file, and then play around with how you can customize it and look exactly the way that you want. So have a play, and I'll see you in the next lecture.